Morning. I know I said I was going to do this next one from the patio, but it's actually a little too cool for me to be out there for a long period of time. So it's actually not that cool, but for me, especially on this day 3 of 4 fasting, it's probably better for me to do this from my office. So get a little bit of change of scenery. But I want to do this episode on, this one is basically for those people who may be out there who may be watching this or listening to this who have just been diagnosed with prostate cancer. In this episode, I'm going to kind of talk about what I wish I would have known on the day that I was diagnosed on Memorial Day. And before I get into that, just remember again, I'm not a doctor. And so none of what I'm saying should be construed as medical advice. It's just stuff that I wish that I would have known, or things that I've done, or things that I personally have experienced, or things that medical professionals have told me. And secondly, of course, obviously, we're going to be talking about prostate cancer here. So without further ado, I wanted to do an episode on being your own advocate as a prostate cancer patient. And I can't stress that enough. When you first get diagnosed, or when I was first diagnosed with prostate cancer, at least when I was first told that it was stage 4, there was a lot of negativity. And so that only served to really scare me. And so I was scared. And so you get into that fright, or that flight or fight syndrome. And I was really trying to fight, but it's hard to get those gears moving in your brain when you've just been told you're diagnosed with this serious disease and it's spread to your lymph nodes and your bones. And the doctors are saying, okay, this is what we got to do. This is what we got to do. As you might remember, all of this took place within about a month's time. And I was doing a lot of research, as much as I could. And then just remember too, being basically in a constant state of shock for the first 2 to 3 weeks. Even though I'm doing research, a lot of things aren't sinking in. Thankfully I had my wife that helped out a ton and helped guide me, and other family members. But there's a lot of things. I wouldn't say a lot, because the professional help that I got medically was great, and a lot of those guys and girls did do their due diligence in trying to explain to me in terms that I could understand about what my options were. But it was also very clear what they wanted me to do. And I think you're going to see a lot of this in a lot of other cancer patient sites and blogs, that the doctors are going to tell you what they think is best. I don't think there's anything nefarious behind it. I think there are some doctors out there who are nefarious. Thankfully, I don't think I've been exposed to many, if any, of them. But as I was saying, I try to do my due diligence. I got on Dr. Google, and I also went and got a second opinion from MSK, Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, where there's doing some of the cutting edge research into clinical trials on how to treat prostate cancer. Here's another thing about prostate cancer. You will find a lot of the clinical trials that are out there have to do with when you have what is called castration resistant prostate cancer, which means that your prostate cancer is no longer responsive to what's called the first line treatment, or baseline or standard of care treatment, which is generally some form of a first and second generation androgen deprivation therapy, and then a chemo. And you can keep the cancer at bay for a long time doing this treatment. How long? I don't know. The doctor at MSK said, I've seen guys like you all the time. I've kept a guy like you who was diagnosed earlier than you. I've kept him alive for 25 years. There's a guy that Men's Health did an expose on a few years ago. He's been alive for, I think, 15 years or 13 years or something like that. The urologists that I know personally, when I was talking to them, they told me they have patients that they've kept alive for 10 to 15 years, on just, this therapy. So even before you get to the stage 2 is what I would call therapy, or once you become what's called castration resistant prostate cancer. So I've got castration sensitive prostate cancer, which means that I am responding to the androgen deprivation therapy, and the cancer is kind of going to sleep. But of course, it's just a game of whack-a-mole, where we're trying to, take myself off of the therapy, put myself back on, maybe change up some of the ADTs, to just keep the cancer guessing and to keep it from developing a mutation. So again, a lot of the clinical trials that are out there and a lot of the new fancy treatments are actually made for the castration resistant. So it's kind of like, once, okay, hey, the first is out of the bag, so let's try for this Hail Mary or whatnot. And the good news with that is a lot of these therapies, or some at least, are showing real promise, so much promise that they're actually looking at moving them to standard of care treatment versus once the cancer becomes castration resistant. So anyway, back to when I was first diagnosed, I didn't really know where to look. I'm a Navy veteran, as you can probably tell from the wall, and I like to be able to control what I can control. And with cancer, you're very quickly thrown into a world where you can't control a whole heck of a lot. And so I wanted to control something. And thankfully, I had a friend of the family. Actually, it was my boy's gym coach, or CrossFit coach. He got me a book. He got me a book by Nathan Crane, who will very quickly tell you he's got 15 years of experience. That's a joke that we've got, because basically on every page of his book he talks about how much experience he has, which is 15 years. But that said, it kind of opened the door to me as far as things that I could control. And the two things that I could control off the bat is, first, my diet, and two, and most importantly, I think, is my frame of mind. The doctors here couldn't help with any of that. As I mentioned before, when I first was told that I had stage 4, I kept asking the urologist, hey, is there anything positive we could take from this? And he was hesitant to really give me anything. And I understand why. This is not a knock on him at all. He's a great doctor. I still see him. He's probably one of the better doctors that I have. But, one of the things he said as far as that was, hey, 10 years ago, there was barely any treatments out there for prostate cancer. And now there are at least 14, and any combination thereof. So, I wasn't given a lot of positivity when I was first diagnosed, which only further served to scare me. And so this book helped me focus, the book by Nathan Crane, and helped kind of get my mind right, number one, which again I think is the most important thing. You have to attack this with positivity and knowing that you're going to beat it. If you don't, then you're already behind the 8 ball. And then, of course, with the nutrition. And the funny thing is, with the nutrition part of it, there's really so little. There's a lot of science out there, and there are a lot of tests that have been done, but a lot of the tests are non-conclusive, and a lot of tests are just single tests done on small subsets, or something of that nature. So, that said, a lot of doctors are hesitant to have a nutritionist on staff, just besides the fact of how much it's going to cost them to do that. But it's also, they don't want to recommend something that's really not generally accepted by a lot of the medical community, because here we start talking about homeopathic docs, and a lot of that stuff is based in a lot of Chinese medicine or Eastern medicine. But I chose, based on a lot of things that I read, some of the websites that were given to me from reading Nathan Crane's book, as well as from some of the websites other friends had given me. But I chose to adopt a plant-based diet and a gluten-free diet almost right off the bat. And as I've said before, uh, I felt it helped me feel good almost immediately. I got rid of the back pain, and this was before I even started the ADT therapy. Now, granted, it was only like a week or two, but I was seeing results even that quick. Because remember, from diagnosis Memorial Day to when I got ADT therapy was about 3 to 4 weeks, and I basically went plant-based right off the bat. And I'm still plant-based today, or vegan. And that said, I'm a vegan with choices, or dealer's choice vegan. How about that? I'm a dealer's choice vegan. And what that means is, yes, I'm a vegan, but I eat red meat once a month. I'm a vegan, but I eat fish maybe twice a month. And the reason why I do that is because my doctor at MSK, she said, hey, do me a favor, plant-based diets are great, but please eat red meat or fish, because you're going to get some B12 nutrients out of there that are going to help you fight infection that you won't get as much of just on a plant-based diet or from supplements. And so that's why I do it. Being a vegan, there's some things that I will not eat anymore. One of them is dairy. I'm not going to eat dairy or drink dairy anymore. I'm not going to eat products that have dairy in it. One of the other things is sugar, or refined sugar. I am not going to eat something that's got refined sugar in it, or on the back of your label of your foods have sugar added. I'm not going to eat something that's got a ton of sugar added into it. Excuse me. And so I can control that. And so the reason behind me doing those things were, again, based off of my research and the things that I did. And so some of the things that I looked at, again, the book by Nathan Crane, but I also looked at Dr. Michael Greger's website, which is nutritionfacts.org. That's facts plural, but nutritionfacts.org. And on that website, he goes through a lot of, why he recommends plant-based diets for not just prostate cancer, but for a whole litany of cancers. Dr. Greger also wrote the book How Not to Die. I think he just wrote another book called How to Live to 100 or something like that. But what I liked about his stuff is that he actually quoted real medical studies that were done that said, why not to drink milk, or why not to eat chicken, or why you might, want to eat chicken before you have cancer, but once you have cancer, you want to stop. Because that's a thing, is some foods are fine to eat before you have cancer, but then once you have cancer, it's recommended that you don't. Again, not by everyone in the medical community, but just by the people that I've read. And, again, for me personally, I don't know if the reason why my cancer is getting beaten down is the diet. I know definitely it's the ADT therapy, but I don't know if the diet is helping or hurting. What I do know, though, is that I do feel a lot better on a plant-based diet. I've eaten gluten a couple of times since becoming gluten-free, and I will tell you that I don't feel good. And maybe that's psychosomatic. Maybe it's just, again, all in my head. But it's how I feel, and I feel more comfortable. It's easier for me to get a good mental state when I'm on a plant-based diet. And so, that's that. And again, it's not just a whim. It's not just some kooky thing that I'm doing. It was just based on my preference. Again, based on the book that I was reading by Nathan Crane, as well as, websites like nutritionfacts.org. Also, the MSK website will also talk about the benefits of nutrition and, some things that you would want. What I would also say too, with some of this research that I would do is, yes, I'd read the first thing that say, hey, go plant-based, go vegan, full hog, no pun intended, and do this. But then I would read other websites, other medical sites, other sites by cancer centers, and I just learned to pick up the common threads through all those. So, for example, most medical websites will tell you, if you have active cancer, to not drink dairy. It's just one of the things that you'll see on there. And they'll also talk about the benefits of a plant-based diet. And so, again, and they'll also talk about not eating refined sugar. The refined sugar in the dairy, from my research, and it's by no means exhaustive, the refined sugar and the dairy have been probably the most consistent things that I've found on all these websites about what not to do if you've got cancer. But some of the other websites that I went to, I already mentioned the nutritionfacts.org, which is Dr. Greger's, but facingourrisk.org and prostatecancer911.com. Those websites, they have very good overviews about different types of prostate cancer, different stages, what standard of care is, and different types of treatments, as well as informational and clinical trials and other things that are out there. And then, of course, there's zerocancer.org, which they actually always, in one of God's ironic foreshadowing, when I was stationed in D.C., I lived at Pentagon Row, and each year I would get woken very early in the morning on a Saturday for a 5K that was being done right outside. And it was the Zero Cancer, or Fight to End Prostate Cancer. It was the Zero Prostate Cancer 5K. Little did I know, I should have gone down and run that 5K at least once or twice. But anyway, that's the zerocancer.org website. And then there's owningcancer.org. This website was actually an uncle of a gentleman that I knew that had testicular cancer. And in talking to him, because he and I both went to MSK, and this was before I went to MSK, and he just in passing said, hey, I've got this kooky uncle who he actually has prostate cancer, and he has this website, and he's doing all these things that aren't mainstream. If you're interested, I'll give you the website. And he did, and I have found it to be a very good source of information just about other things I could potentially do. Not just that, but he also links to other websites, and he also talks about other tools I could put in my toolkit in this fight against prostate cancer. And then, of course, other podcasts. You can do a podcast search and find basically a lot of different podcasts on prostate cancer. The one thing I'll warn you about on these podcasts is a lot of them are for urologists and oncologists. So you'll listen to them, and you have to, well, for me anyway, I've got to listen to it about 3 or 4 times to really kind of get the gist of where they're going. A lot of it is at the 800 or 1000 or PhD level, because it's for PhDs or aspiring PhDs. But they talk about a lot of really good stuff in there. But some of the podcasts that I have found that have been very helpful to me have been Prostate Cancer, The Road to Recovery, which is done by and it's actually a more current one. A lot of these podcasts you'll find were done a while back or even years back, and then they're just dropped because, again, a lot of these podcasts are for cancer survivors who caught the cancer early and were stage 1. And, that's almost 100% survival rate or cure rate if you catch it at stage 1. But stage 4, not so much. So anyway, Prostate Cancer, The Road to Recovery is both a YouTube and a podcast, and it's done by a Navy vet, and I'm a Navy vet, and he's got stage 4 prostate cancer as well, and he just kind of talks about a lot of different things with regards to treatment and what other people do, because even though you've got stage 4, doctors treat stage 4 cancer patients differently. But anyway, I found his podcast to be extremely helpful. Then there's the Prostate Cancer Update, which is, again, one of these ones that I was telling you that is really meant for other cancer docs or oncologists. But there's a couple of episodes on new treatments that aren't that old. I think they were done in May of 2023 that kind of helped me formulate my questions for the oncologists when I went to see them. And then there's Cancer Straight Talk, which is done by Memorial Sloan Kettering, or MSK, and they do a whole gamut. It's not just prostate cancer, it's cancer in general, but they're not that long. They're about 15 minutes. I think about some are a little bit longer than that. I will warn you though, if you're just diagnosed, not all of these podcasts for MSK have a happy ending. And that's one of the toughest things with researching a lot of this cancer is, look, cancer is scary because it does kill. And there are some really scary cancers out there. Prostate cancer is scary, but thankfully, due to advancements in the last 10 years, I have a very positive outlook as far as my odds. Dr. Google will tell you otherwise. But again, I think that's because a lot of these treatments that they've come out with for prostate cancer have only been around for 10 years. And guess what? Those people that are on that treatment, a lot of them are still around, and it's been 10 years or more. So, but again, when you just got diagnosed and you're trying to get your mind right as far as being positive, it's hard to listen to some of these stories that don't turn out as well. I can remember reading a blog from a guy in England who had stage 4, and he was young, under 50, and he was going through the same treatment as I am. And anyway, he was scared, and that was obvious from the blog. But he was also getting feedback from others that were responding to his blog. And, it was, hey, I'm on treatment. Things are going okay. Hey, I'm on my treatment month 3. Things are well. Month 4, hey, it's getting tough. I really don't like the side effects. It just really stinks. Having problems with my personal life. And then there's a no post for month 5, and then month 6 there's a post again, and it's the girlfriend saying, hey, John died. His body just couldn't take it. And reading that, when I'm just in the beginning stages, I've had it for 6 months now. It's just sometimes hard to take. So just be prepared that not all of these stories have a happy ending. But again, I just read off a litany of resources that I used when I first was diagnosed. And I hope that, if you're newly diagnosed with prostate cancer, you can get some comfort from some of these websites as well, as far as educating yourself as to what your disease is and what options there are that are out there. Again, like I said, you need to be your own advocate. I say this because were I aware of all the treatment options that were out there, I may not have agreed finally to do the chemo. Chemo sucks. Everybody says chemo sucks, but what does that mean? I mean, if you've watched some of my other videos, you've kind of heard me talk about the fatigue, or just the mental mind games that chemo play on you. The feeling that your skin is on fire. Just all that stuff. Your gums bleeding. Weird aches and pains that you get from poisoning yourself to kill the cancer. All to just hopefully make the ADT more effective. Then you read about treatments like lutetium-177, which was approved by the FDA in, I think, May of 2023, about the time I was getting diagnosed, which is approved for late stage or metastatic or castration resistant prostate cancer. But the results have been so positive and the side effects so few that they're actually doing trials right now for for using lutetium in initial care for prostate cancer, for stage 4 castration sensitive. And by the way, the oncologist that I was supposed to see within month 1, but I wasn't able to see until month 3 or 4. They were running one of those trials because they have one of the leading radiation oncologists there, and he was conducting one of these trials with the lutetium. And again, I didn't know, so I didn't start asking about lutetium until 2 weeks ago. And so I saw the doc, and he said, hey, the trial is closed. We need to go along. I recommend you stay the course, and if and when your cancer becomes castration resistant, then we've got a bunch of other options, including lutetium, that we can do for you. Great. But the goal is, and I will tell you that the goal is to stay alive. The goal is to stay alive until they find a cure. And I'm confident that they will find a cure someday. And my goal is to stay alive until they do. And you know what? I would even be happy if they just find some treatment that just doesn't have a lot of side effects. And they're doing that all the time. It's just that these side effects or these treatments are only approved for, castration resistant. That said, I also know that once the FDA approves treatment, any doctor can prescribe that treatment to you regardless of what stage your cancer is in. You just have to find the right doctor. So sometimes this is what this is just trying to find the right doctor who's on board with your treatment. A cowboy, if you will. But if the FDA approves it, it means it's safe for you. I mean, the FDA approved the chemo, and the chemo you wouldn't take if you were healthy. So anyway, you have to be your own advocate, and you have to study up as much as possible, and know that you do have time. I mean, the thing that I was scared about, and one of the reasons why I started so quick, was I didn't know how much time I have, and none of us know how much time we have. But prostate cancer is a slow-growing cancer. Now, you can have fast-growing prostate cancer, but what does that mean? It could mean that your fast-growing is that you're doubling your PSA within 3 months or 6 months. But even though your PSA is doubling, that does not necessarily mean that the prostate cancer is growing or spreading throughout the body as fast. Sometimes it does mean that. I mean, so there's a lot of variables that go into this, and there's a lot that the doctors just don't know. You've got to do what you're comfortable with. And that's really kind of my message here is you need to do research. It's going to be hard to do research when you're first diagnosed because your brain is going to be everywhere. The bottom is going to fall out of your gut because it's going to be like, oh crap. Am I going to be able to see my kids graduate high school? Am I going to be able to provide for my family? It's tough to do, but you have to do it because your life literally depends on it. Hopefully you have a support network like I did that could help me with some of this stuff. A wife who has got a much better head on her shoulders than I do, that can help me decipher a lot. Sounding board. If you don't have a support group within family and friends, there are blog groups out there. I'm a veteran. There's a veterans prostate cancer group on Facebook that has a lot of experience and has a lot of different cases and scenarios from stage 1 all the way to stage 4. People who automatically got their prostate removed to ones who are just attacking with radiation therapy. And that's the other thing to kind of mention too is, I had this appointment with this radiological oncologist who's one of the tops in his field. And if you don't believe him, just ask him. But and I do believe that he is. But he talked about a lot of different things. He talked about there being 3 different types of oncologists: the medical, the surgical, and the radiological. And of course, those different oncologists are going to want to treat the cancer the way that their discipline recommends. So for example, the radiological oncologist will lean towards a radiological solution versus a chemical solution, like the surgical oncologist or the medical oncologist. Sorry, the medical oncologist, and of course the surgical oncologist will tend toward surgery. Now that's a generalization. Not all of them will, but that's just, that's the type of oncologist they are, so that's what they're most up on as far as the treatments go. But yeah, this is why it's so important to, be your own advocate. Do your research. I'll try to put some of these in the comments section. If you've got any questions about some of these resources and you've just been diagnosed with cancer, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm already past the 30-minute mark, so this has gone on way longer than I'd wanted it to, but it's an important episode, and so I kind of wanted to I'm not being paid for any of this stuff. I'm just doing this because I was once you. I still am you in some ways. But if I could have seen a podcast like this, it would have helped me and my peace of mind. It would have helped me know that there are things out there that I can control and that I can control without thinking that I'm doing harm to myself by doing things that are going to help the cancer. That said, I'll end with this. I have another friend who is also very up on a lot of Eastern ways of thinking, and he said something that really resonated with me, and it's about how we view the cancer. And this friend of mine, he said, "Hey, I'd looked at some of your videos, and in talking to you, I hear you talking about this fight against cancer, and that just seems odd to me because cancer cells that you have are you. The cancer is your own body." One of my doctor friends calls cancer slow motion suicide, and I think that's very poetic, and this friend of mine is a very poetic person. But those two things are related. It is slow motion suicide because it's your body killing itself. Sometimes fast and sometimes slow. And so words like fighting cancer, if you think about it, just translate into you fighting yourself. And so maybe there's some benefit to some acceptance or some embracing or just really changing the terminology on it, because it's your body. Those are your cells. There's just some miscommunication here. The cells have mutated, and you've got to get them to stop mutating, and get them gone so you can be healthy again. And so that really resonated with me as far as some of that terminology. So I may not say fighting cancer as much. Don't know what I'm going to say yet, but maybe I'll talk to my poetic friend, and he can help me out with that. So, yeah, that said, again, I hope this helps somebody. I know it's long. There's a lot of diarrhea of the mouth happening here. I don't like monologuing, but it is what it is. There you have it. I'm sure a lot of it didn't make sense. I'm sure I mumbled. I apologize. I'm feeling really good. I hope you are too. And so until next time, just remember, anything is possible.